Welcome to Rapid Harmony. I'm Emanuel Brown. This is a space for high-achieving souls who want more than outcomes. You want resonance, you want truth, you want a life that moves with purpose instead of pressure. Here, we explore success with the soul and direction with depth. We slow things down just enough to hear your own wisdom again. We breathe, we question, we remember the part of you that never needed permission to leave. Every conversation is an invitation to trust yourself more than the noise around you, and live from that clarity that rises when you stop forcing and start listening. Take a breath, settle in, let's begin. What if most people aren't mentally ill? They're just carrying trauma no one ever helped them release. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's part of the story. I think there are people who have biological imbalances and genetic vulnerabilities, people who have terrible diets, who have, so to speak, mental illness as a result of that. You could argue that there's trauma that would be driving someone to poison themselves with bad food. But there are also realities of poverty and other, situations. So I think trauma is deeply, deeply underrepresented in how we think about mental illness. But I don't think that's the only root cause, is my thought.
Love it.
Yeah.
Fully agree. And again, that's why I was excited to bring you both here. So today I'm joined by Will and Krista Veer, two leaders who are reshaping the future of mental health. Will is a board certified psychiatrist and the founder of the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, where he's trained thousands of clinicians around the world. He's known for bridging neuroscience, trauma healing, and psychedelic assisted therapy long before it became mainstream, let alone trendy on social media, right? He's one of the physicians other doctors go to when they want to learn how to actually heal the nervous system instead of just manage symptoms. Krista is a trauma specialist, somatic practitioner with over 2 decades of experience helping people transform patterns that traditional talk therapy can't touch. She's a mentor to therapists and healers, and her work blends cutting-edge nervous system science with deep intuitive wisdom. Together, that's why I brought them both here today. They built one of the most respected trauma-informed psychiatric training ecosystems in the world. Their work sits at the frontier of healing, where science, safety, and soul finally meet. And I'm honored to have them here, and most importantly, call them friends. So thank you guys for coming. Excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Kyle.
Amazing. Well, I want to dig into this concept of mental health a bit, and also then embodiment, how this all brings in and comes around full circle with relationships. And I'm curious, what do you believe is the single biggest misunderstanding about mental health today?
What would you say to that?
Oh, what would you say?
Well, I get a lot of downloads from you, given your background and history. And what I love about your view, which I also like to take on, is that anybody can heal with the right tools. And it's kind of like the question that you started out with is like, do we have the tools that we really need to get to root causes?
Right.
And our stand is that we do. We have those tools. And that there are the tools for mental health out there, but then there's also the tools about how to integrate it, how to embody it inside of relation and connection.
Yeah.
I mean, the evidence is clear that healthy relationships is a critical nutrition for people. Without that, mental health is pretty difficult to accomplish, let alone longevity.
Right.
So we often start with that, as what is the quality of the relationships that the people have in their lives. Relationships are often shaped by early trauma. So we have to, that leads us down the rabbit hole of what happened to you. How did you become who you are? And so then we can build our assessment from there.
I love that. And as you say this, it brings me to thinking of a client that I've had for a while, good friend, amazing guy. And they've been trying to figure out, he's depressed, and the medicines aren't working, and he's just depressed. And at its core essence, as I've been looking at every tool and psychological tool piece to pull in, the big download for me with all of this is loneliness, lack of community, lack of connection. And I started walking through his day from when he wakes up to when he goes to bed, and how much interaction of substance he has. And there was like none. It was almost like the worst version of Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And blew me away looking at it. And even just watching the shift, you know, while it wasn't the cure-all, just the shift of, hey, why don't you get a puppy? Was profound. And I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist. I can't, I'm not a MD. I can't write a prescription. So I did send him a text saying, hey, this is your insight to go get a puppy. And I helped him go through the process of picking up. But that alone already started to create connection, community. Yeah. And then since then, he started walking down this path of can you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation to start living the hobbies and things that you did as a kid or are interested to, and like putting yourself out there to break through. And I'm curious, you know, when you talk about connection and community and facing those shadows and that deep work, you know, there was something that was broken in the old model that made you want to create something new, right?
Right.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about, like, what did you see that was broken in that old model that made you want to create something new?
Well, when I went to medical school and trained in psychiatry, the two main tools that I learned how to use were medications and talk therapy. There was not a whole lot of attention to root causes. I mean, somebody might have a slow thyroid and then they have symptoms of depression, but that was sort of like the only root cause on the biological side. We got literally 1 hour of nutrition in medical school. 1 hour, not one course, but 1 hour. Imagine how big a role nutrition plays.
Was it brought to you by Coca-Cola?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, we could look at the food pyramid, right? And what you learn in school of, you know, bread and carbs are at the bottom. That's the biggest layer, right? That's what you should be eating the most of, right? It's not helpful. So we're up against culture when we're up against these layers of misinformation.
Right.
And so when I got out of my training and I started my practice, I found out pretty quickly that the things that I learned how to use were very ineffective for too many people. And that's what led me into trying to find better tools for people. And you talk about loneliness and this client that you're working with. I mean, that's such a huge epidemic that people are dealing with. And it bleeds not only into relationship and relationship health, but also spiritual health. And how is it possible that we could find deep meaning in our lives in isolation, right? I mean, we can do meaningful things. We could write books, we could code really cool software, we could do all kinds of things. But in terms of like the deep meaning, like how do people develop meaning is a critical element of mental health that I think falls into the spiritual world. And so that wasn't part of the attention that we put on mental health in training. So it turns out there were a lot of things that were just not part of the training that were critical for people. So when we're working with people today, we're looking for these deficits, we're looking for these gaps where, like for your puppy's a great example, like the puppy intervention is very effective for some people, right? There's all kinds of hormones that happen in that connection with the animal.
We have 2 fur babies and they bring me so much oxytocin.
Yes.
Every day. It really,
that's right.
At this point, now that they're not puppies anymore,
yeah.
They're adult dogs.
Yes.
It really supports our entire system, wouldn't you say?
That's right.
Yeah. And us
less
connecting,
cortisol and more
oxytocin.
Yeah. I love that. That's part of my morning. Like when I go through morning rituals, I have this, I have 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 kids, and a very full plate. And in the early morning, when I walk downstairs to take my one dog out, even though she's been holding it for a long time, you think she'd want to go right away. She runs right back up to the space between the 2 sets of stairs, rolls over and is like, no, we're getting cuddle time first before I go. And it's just ingrained in her as like, this is a magical moment. And I'm like, well, I'm
Yes.
taking my dose of oxytocin
Yeah,
right now and just give her
totally.
cuddles. And then boom, she goes outside
So great.
and holds it that extra little bit. She's like, I've been holding it 6 hours. I can hold it an extra 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
Great
sweet.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting piece. And I love how you guys got into this idea of the personal healing journey and the deep work and how it relates to the mental health. So how do you think that it has shaped this work? And then how did you, I guess, in turn, bring your own healing journeys into the work that you do?
Well, if we just go into a relationship for a minute.
Right.
So we met in our later half of our lives 8 years ago.
Almost right before the later half of our lives. Late
Yeah.
40s.
Yeah.
Third of your life. You guys,
Yeah. We're going to go a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was we've been through a lot of relationship before. You were in a 20-year marriage. You were in a 20-year marriage. I was in several different relationships. And we really wanted a partnership that could be of greater service to the world than just our little private love oasis. Yeah. And we had also learned so much from these other relationships about what we don't want. And one of the things that we have really focused on is that we're committed to healing together the parts of us that are still wounded, that have been traumatized, that have been shut down, that have been closed away indoors. And so a big part of our relationship is really coming together and having that be part of what we're up to. And with Will's background with psychiatry, mental health, therapy, all the things that he brings, and then my background with consulting and trauma-informed relationships and coaching, we really started to create a system in our partnership, an operating system that we're very clear about what we want in our partnership, and we have specific relationship agreements that support that vision. And so a lot of those relationship agreements are also geared towards how do we heal these parts and how do we stay connected, repaired, and aligned so that we can live into our greatest vision. So that's from a relational standpoint, how I would answer your question. Yeah.
I love that. And I think in theory, most people state it like, oh, address your shadows, face your shadows, but they don't actually embody it. So they'll take the idea of address your shadows, meaning I'm just going to embrace the fact that I have these shadows. And if you aren't me, F off. Doesn't matter. Like, accept me for who I am. And I personally look at a lot of that as spiritual teenager type of mindset, which is as we go through an evolution of becoming, on that path and diving into the deeper parts of the relationships with self, and then eventually getting to a spiritual, know-it-all like a teenager, and then getting spiritually humbled like a parent or a fur baby parent. We get to this place of a complete, evolution. And then how does it work in healthy, harmonized, right relationships? So with the healthy, harmonized, right relationship, how has that been for you two, taking two East meets West approaches where both of you are East and West, bring them together and actually playing that out in the day-to-day? Has it been, was it easy street from day one, or was it a bit of a struggle?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really a myth, and that deep, meaningful, fulfilling, nourishing relationship is easy ever. Right. I mean, it's
if it's easy, I would be concerned.
or it's the honeymoon state.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's plenty of conflict, plenty of rupture. We focus on repair is a big part of how we try to welcome the ruptures. There's a saying in secure adult functioning that the repair is assured. You know that repair is coming. And most of us, I'll speak for myself, grew up in families where repair was not something that was done. It wasn't something that was taught. It wasn't something that was shown. And so what you end up doing is white knuckling the attunement phase, which is 1/3 of healthy adult relating is feeling attuned to the person. The other third is rupture, and the other third is repair. So if you don't know repair is coming, you're not going to look forward to rupture.
Right.
Because you might think, oh shit, this is it. Like, we're done if we have a fight again about the same issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
One of our agreements is to always have abundant repair. And
I
abundant
love that.
repair to us means, we could go back in the mental health track
Yeah.
for a minute here, but abundant repair means, at least in my body, I know that we're abundantly repaired when my body wants to get closer to Will's body. And if it still wants to be like, okay, fine, we're okay, but I'm not wanting to actually get closer to him,
Yeah.
then I know I'm not repaired over here. So we go for that. And it really is a game changer for us.
I love that, because it's not just left brain cerebral. It's
Right.
how is this somatically feeling? And that's actually an interesting way of looking at, my next question for you, which is, what does the nervous system actually need, in your opinions? And they could be totally different. What do you think the nervous system needs in order to feel safe again?
Wow. Well, I think there's a feeling of trust that is, I use the word trust, but it's such a somatic experience, right? It's a feeling of relaxing, opening, your heart's opening to the person. You're noticing that the bracing that you were feeling in your body is melting away. You want to tell him our exercise that we use for that?
Yeah. So if
Love to hear that.
if we're triggered,
Yeah.
and we're both activated, one of us who might have more of the adult perspective points to the couch. I say couch time. And the person who's the most triggered or activated will lay down on the couch.
Usually they say, I don't want to do this
They're
right
like,
now.
I don't know.
Right.
No, I don't want to
Right.
do this. And then they're
I
like,
don't need
okay,
this.
we agreed to abundant repair. So
Yeah.
so they lay on the couch, and then the person who's also probably activated but less activated lays on top of them, and we're co-regulating at this point. We're not talking. We're breathing until we start to notice our bodies are feeling safer, more relaxed, more open.
Feel your breathing change, your
yeah.
heart rate changes.
And we don't even try to have a conversation until like we're more regulated together.
Oh, I love it. I always focus on showing people, instead of think, speak, act, that's totally wrong. It's align, think, speak, act.
I love
and
that.
so the regulation works there. And you also, your plan reminds me a bit of one of the things my mom used to do, which was very well intended, but I think it missed a few of the pieces in there, which is, she had 4 kids, and one was 8 years older than me, 6 years older than the oldest, my brother, and he became the babysitter. And then there was 3 of us, all within about 18 months of each other.
Wow.
So we're running around, and when there were fights and she'd walk in, she would make us hug each other and sing, brothers and sisters love each other, brothers and sisters love each other. And
God.
it gave me lots of trauma that I still have right now. But maybe if she would have said, hey, if you guys hug each other, you'll co-regulate each other's nervous systems, and you'll all get calm. Maybe that one would have slipped in. So her intention was good, but we had a couple of missing pieces there, right?
Wow.
Yeah, align first. And then
Align first.
Then sing.
Right. And you both are opting in, which I think is a really important part, because we were kids and we weren't opting into this.
Totally.
I'm like, I want to throw something at her. I don't want to hug her right now.
Right.
Totally.
So the opt-in process, right? Everyone opts in when they get into relationship. They opt in with vows, they say. What do you do in those moments to pull yourself into opting in the moment when the moment isn't good?
So yeah, I feel pretty fired up about this, because in our world, most people come into a relationship, even if they get married and they have vows, that what they're operating from are assumptions and expectations that are usually implicit. They're not explicit. And so vows are usually, I will love you till I die, or there's some sort of big in the like pie in the sky picture. For us, prior to each other, we were in relationships that didn't have explicit relationship agreements about how we're doing partnership. And so for us, those are really the things that stop us in the moment, that we already mutually understand, like we have the same definition because we've talked about it. And then we mutually agreed to this practice. And if we didn't have those in place, I think we would be flailing. Like,
Yeah, so the agreements are made to sort of provide guardrails for the difficult moments.
Right.
And there have been situations where, Krista had to say to me, well, it doesn't sound like you're keeping the agreement to X, Y, and Z right now. And I'd be like, God damn it, you're right. I'm not keeping that agreement right now.
Right.
But thanks for reminding me, because I actually agreed to that ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's super helpful.
Yeah. And so before meeting you, all of my relationships were based on assumption expectation. And maybe we had norms about how we dealt with conflict, but then when shit really hit the fan, it's like those norms go out the window.
Right. Doors are slammed, cars drive off.
Yeah. We stop talking to each other.
Right.
Someone grabs a golf club on the front of the windshield.
Exactly right.
That's never been in the news before.
Hopefully it hasn't happened to you.
Has not happened to me.
Okay.
No, I'm more the self-loathing. If I'm doing something, I'm hitting myself way harder with the golf club.
Yeah.
So it's more the guilt shame spiral, which actually is a great transition because spirals is a very interesting thing. You both have stepped in some capacities into the psychedelic space and pioneered it as well. And where I've seen it's been really valuable for clientele is if they're in this, this loop, if you will, where they're spiraling and can't stop thinking about an unhealthy relationship, an unhealthy situation, and they get into that guilt and shame.
Totally.
And I'm curious, what was that first step for you that made you curious about it, let alone merging it into your work?
Yeah, good question. Well, I was minding my own business as a Buddhist about 15 years ago, and a little over 15. And one of my friends in the Buddhist community invited me to an ayahuasca ceremony. And it happened to be on the night before Mother's Day. And the Peruvian shaman gave this incredible prayer to his mother, to all the mothers, to Mother Earth, to the rivers and all the mothers. And it just cracked me open, and I was bawling my eyes out felt like an hour. And in that moment, I realized that something different was happening to me healing wise with ayahuasca than anything that meditation had gotten to. Meditation had gotten to really deep places for me. But I would say that in, looking back, spending 10 years in deep meditation commitment, it helped me with my relationship with myself. But what ayahuasca started to do was help me with relationship with the planet and with my ancestors and with people I cared about. And so it opened up a new layer of healing for me. And so it became an important part of my life after that, because I realized that I had a lot of relationship healing that I need to do.
I love that. Sitting with ayahuasca and sitting with, mushrooms, I've realized, the way I've tried to bridge the gap in conversation to people when they're sounding completely foreign to them, or they think I'm just out there doing some sort of drugs, is like, look, you can go to a teacher who's human, and the human teacher has had the knowledge of humans, which is a little speck of the life of the whole planet. Or you can go to the teacher, which is the root of the planet, like an ayahuasca or a mushroom, which has been here millions of years. And it's like getting to sit down and have a conversation with a teacher that's been here millions of years. And what's interesting is, again, when we talk about embodiment, you've embodied this into your work and your life purpose. So how was that received when you made that decision of like, hey, I've now sat with, Mama Ayahuasca and had this incredible experience, and now I'm getting back into beta brain and I'm thinking logically, and my ego and amygdala are teaching me, and I'm actually going to use this and shift it into my career. What was that like?
Well, there was a period of time where I kept my ayahuasca experience really quiet because I didn't know what would happen if I spoke publicly about it. And so I was going to South America and doing work there. And after a while, I thought, wow, this is healing me so much. Maybe this is my new program. Maybe this is where I find a bigger expression as a healer. than psychiatry could provide me. And I kept going to ceremonies asking that question, and each time the answer was, you know what, we have enough apprentices down here. We actually need help with spreading consciousness in North America and worldwide, and we need people like you to help with that. And honestly, I wasn't very happy with that answer because it seemed a lot simpler to just move to the jungle and take on apprenticeship, which is hard. And there's nothing easy about that. But it seemed harder to be this bridge. But, you know, that's what was told. And so I came back and we started the Institute, and we decided to train as many people as we could in a really good way. So that's what we've been doing for the past several years is training people who, most of them have almost no experience or zero experience in psychedelics, licensed medical professionals or therapists, and they're having their first experiences in their trainings with us, which is so precious. And it's such a privilege to hold the space for that. It's been really powerful to watch that unfold.
You're also missing like a piece, which is in between that, the ayahuasca. You were also on phase 2 of the MDMA study here in Boulder.
Right.
And then shortly after you and I met, we were at a conference, and there was a question that was asked of like, what's the most meaningful thing that you could do in your lifetime? And that's a pretty common question. Yeah. But for some reason, it hit you in a particular way where it really, you just were sitting there and kind of being like, oh shit, I need to train thousands of people in this. It was almost like it was like a instructions or something.
It was like a download.
It was like a download.
Beautiful.
And
well,
then
it's got your chills of confirmation. So
yeah.
There you go.
And then you acted on it and with our business partners, and it's been a wild success. So
yeah, that's true. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit more about the clinical trials and being part of that, the phase 2, because MDMA, again, you're talking about people going through psychedelic experiences in this safe container, and it's clinical and it's part of their training, and they're opting in. A lot of people's perception on MDMA, they're like, what, that stuff that I took and popped when I went to a concert and I danced and I told everybody I love them. Yeah. And then I sobered up and I said, I don't love half these people.
Or most of them.
Or most of them. Yeah. I don't know that from experience at all.
Oh, yeah.
But I also understood the power of the intention behind it, which shifts everything. So I'm curious, let's expand a little bit about that. Like, that is not only like, hey, I have to tell mom and dad I'm going to be doing this from underground to here, but now I'm going to, almost be a prophet for this medicine in some capacity. So how was that experience?
Well, thank you for bringing up the difference between the contexts. And it's so important that we talk about that, because I meet people all the time who have had, hundreds of psychedelic experiences in maybe a Burning Man or with friends and so on. And nothing wrong with that. But you wouldn't believe how many people who've had that experience, then they go and have a safe, controlled, clinical, intentional healing experience with a psychedelic. And they say, I can't believe this is the same stuff. It does not feel the same.
Exactly.
And so when people came through the MDMA trial, the street name for MDMA, of course, is ecstasy, or now people call it Molly. People would come out of these experiences and there was so much healing going on, and they'd say, I don't know why they call this stuff ecstasy. That was not fun.
Right.
What I just went through. And I found self-forgiveness for the first time. I found self-compassion. I zoomed out to the 30,000 foot view, and I saw that the thing that happened to me, I was there and I played a role, but it wasn't my fault. I didn't ask to be X, Y, and Z. So huge difference between recreational or social use and clinical use. And the results are different, I've had plenty of people under my care as a psychiatrist who used ecstasy every weekend and still had terrible PTSD because they were using it out at a rave or whatever. And there was just that wasn't the intention. That wasn't the purpose of the use.
I feel like these medicines, especially, if I'm looking at mushrooms, for example, I feel like as similar to puppies, they are this embodiment of unconditional love. And part of that unconditional love is kind of like the movie Princess Bride, where they're like, as you wish.
Right.
So if you're in, and, as Richard Alpert, Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, and I've connected with his son, Zach, have talked about with set and setting. And then Zach has added in sustainability, which is how am I actually embodying this and moving it in. I really think that this medicine will be like, okay, I love you unconditionally. So if you just want this limited experience of go out and make the music better and the colors brighter, great. I will show you that piece of me. And then since one is all, I bring that into relationships with friends and family. Like, I have people right now who all they see me as is Kyle Brown, celebrity personal trainer, nutritionist. That's the way in which they met me. And so the only questions they will ask me are fitness, nutrition. And then they'll just say, hey, how are your training clients for fitness? I'm like, well, I have a few left, but my business has changed and expanded, since then. And I think that the medicine, it's a very similar thing in that capacity, where it's like, as you wish, whatever you want in this environment, we are going to show you. So setting is so important in these clinical trials. And for those who have like hardly any experience or no experience with setting, can you describe a little bit of what setting is like and what that actually means?
Yeah. So the setting, when we talk about that in psychedelic therapy, we're talking about an environment that is supportive for the release or the opening up of the shadow, for lack of a better word. So the point of these therapies, for people who are very unfamiliar, who are listening, is that they evoke what's in us. What's already there gets to come out now. A lot of people don't know that ordinary consciousness, a big part of it is denying what's inside of us unconsciously and consciously.
Yeah.
So there's a suppressing function in ordinary consciousness that's just part of the hardware. So what can happen with the right setting is that it creates an environment where the skeletons in your closet, so to speak, get to come out, and we get to meet them. And hopefully we meet them with care and consciousness and curiosity, and we can ask them, tell us your story, and these skeletons can say, well, you know what, I got screwed over, and this, that, and the other thing happened to me. And it's like, okay, you're part of the whole. You're here in the light with us. What else do you have to say? And then we can gradually, that disowned part of us can become part of the whole.
Yeah.
And so it becomes about wholeness in the healing process.
And part of that is the safety that you were talking about,
Right.
and choosing the correct guide that one feels extremely safe with, and held by, and what we stand for is trained.
Exactly.
Very well trained, so that we can have any kind of experience we need and know that we're going to be safe.
And the thing is, ideally, now this is a complete fantasy, okay? The ideal guide would be someone who has been to every part of the dark corner of their soul.
Yes.
Now, we know that those kinds of people maybe exist, but they're pretty hard to find, and their schedules are pretty full. So booking an appointment with that person is hard to get. So my point is that guides can be effective without having been to every dark corner of their soul, as long as they're continuing to explore the dark corners of their soul.
Yes.
But the problem is that guides are human. Like you were talking about the human teacher versus ayahuasca, right? The human spiritual teacher has a human personality that they're trying to teach through.
Right.
And it's a filter, right? It's the same thing with a psychedelic guide, where their humanity is going to interfere sometimes. And that has to be dealt with in a good way by the guide.
Right.
And so that takes a lot of training to learn how to not be a perfect guide, but learn how to deal with the mistakes and the limitations that you have as a guide, and take responsibility for that, so that you're not shutting down the other person's experience without knowing that you're doing that, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense. I love in shamanic practice, there's so much synergy in these different pieces of, in shamanism, you call it becoming the hollow bone.
Yes.
Where you want to get as clear as possible so the medicine can move through you and not get interrupted.
Yes.
The other thing that's really interesting and actually very time relevant for my journey is, as I've been creating that capacity, I just went through some more shamanic training with one of my mentors out in South Carolina when we were running a retreat, Soaring Blue Eagle, and we were sitting there, and she used an analogy of apartments where she was like, look, you've got this apartment building, and there are apartments that are these shadows that we've neglected. And I had to sit back in this to continue to hold my capacity and start looking at anything that became a shame or a guilt monster or a piece of me that I thought like, oh, I've overcome that part of me. And so I don't need to address it. But like, can you give it running water, shelter, nice little fridge, maybe some cable TV.
Right. Maybe you can clean out the moldy ceiling.
In there, exactly. And actually look at the complaint letters. Yeah.
I love that analogy.
But the embodiment of it is hard. And it comes back to what you both said about both relationship and the personal journey and the self-mastery journey, which is, this is not an easy road whatsoever. However, most people don't realize that the day-to-day basis that they're feeling is crap.
Right.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and relationally.
Totally.
So they don't know what they're based on isn't how bad it is.
Totally.
So you both have embraced this journey in all capacities and also in partnership. How good does it get?
What'd you say?
Well, I was reflecting today on how it's really hard for us to imagine what's possible if we don't have a model or a template. It's kind of like what you're saying. It's like people don't even realize that either they're living in a desert of isolation or their body feels like crap, but it's just kind of normal to them. And how hard it is to actually be able to find a possibility when you don't have a template for it or a model for it. And I guess I'll speak to the relationship piece, and maybe you can speak to the mental health piece, but I never imagined that I would have the kind of partnership I have today with you. But the only reason why I'm here is after my previous partner before you had a sudden death. Once I got through that dark night of the soul, I was walking my parents' dog. I remember the exact moment. I was like, do I ever even want a relationship again? And I just stopped and I was like, it's the most thing that I want. It's like, but only if it's extraordinary.
Right.
And I'm not going to settle for anything less. And I had to decide how I would create that kind of partnership. I didn't have a model for it. I didn't even know what extraordinary meant at the moment. But through my journey and our journey, we've discovered ways to create what we have. But neither of us had a model for this, I would say.
Yeah, true.
So I don't know if I could answer that.
The good news is that I think the human apparatus, the somatic sense is clear when you clear the contractions. And you kind of know, is my sense. But
you know what?
You know how good it can get when you keep removing the layers. But you can keep removing layers. Is the thing. So I think to me, it's not about like getting to the destination. It's about continuing to work the path and keep optimizing.
Right.
But we do have roadmaps, and we have teachers who have been through things before, and they're experts in relational health and mental health that we can take notes from. But they only, I would say, and I say this with a lot of respect for my teachers, they have a certain perspective too, right? And they're seeing life through a human lens, and it's part of what we can see, what they can see, but it's not the whole picture. So I think we have to keep authoring our own existence and keep learning and growing and peeling the layers away, lifelong.
To me, that brings me back a little bit to what you said about the difference between the medicine man in the jungle and also the bringing this to the West, similar to how Yogananda brought yoga here. And, and beyond. And I think it's a really interesting piece of integration of having teachers and having experiences and looking at these medicines also through a lens of how does this fit into the culture of Western society, and specifically for the listeners, to the high achieving conscious entrepreneur with a big vision, who I say these are the people who've signed up for the expert level of the video game of life, right? Which is, when I say expert, it's less certainty, right? You have a larger capacity for uncertainty if you're an entrepreneur. You have to, or else you aren't an entrepreneur for more than maybe 6 weeks or 6 months or until your daddy's trust fund runs out.
Right.
So applying psychedelic assisted therapy and capacities to those who, are listening, who are the types of people who've really put themselves out there and are typically the leaders who everyone comes to for their problems. Where do you see that this type of work has really helped them?
Well, I think there are two sort of categories. One is a mental health category, and the other one's an optimization category. And I think you said it well a few minutes ago when you said that some people get into this spiraling with shame and guilt, and it's like a rumination. It's like circular thinking. And when you're around someone like that, it's painful because you can't convince them that their beliefs are inaccurate, because it's part of it. As you think, oh, I'm the only one who has it down, who knows what's going on, but your thoughts are very dark and colored. So one of the beautiful things about psychedelic medicines is that they interrupt those circuits in the brain that would have the hamster wheel keep rolling, and you can stop that, which is incredible. So it's super helpful in that regard. So some entrepreneurs might get stuck if something's not going well, and I can relate when things are hard with our institute. I go in, you've seen this, and I just go into spiraling. So the medicines can help that quite a bit. For optimization, I mean, we know from stories shared by Steve Jobs and Sam Altman, I mean, all of these people who've done incredible things to move things forward with technology. Elon Musk, arguably, I don't know how he's using them, but the point is, creativity is a huge opening with psychedelic use. I'm not sure that you need to use the same doses as you would use in psychedelic therapy for treating depression. A lot of people get huge benefits from microdosing in terms of coming up with new ideas or ways to solve problems that you hadn't thought of before. So I think there are a lot of different ways that can be useful to that type of person.
What are the mechanisms that help? Because again, if somebody's looking at these things through a party lens, because that's their only introduction, what are the mechanisms within the medicine that is enabling something to stop and break through that loop that these people are stuck in?
Well, I think there are two factors. One is the biological factor. So we have, through the work of really cool research from people like Robin Card-Harris, we know that the brainwave patterns in the default mode network that specifically include a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate gyrus that is involved in rumination. So negative thought loops. That part of the brain is not, under healthy conditions, part of the default mode network, but in depression it is. And then we see with psilocybin and MDMA and ketamine and other therapeutic tools, that part, the anterior cingulate gyrate, gets disconnected back again from the default mode network, so you're not ruminating. So there's a biological fact about that for a lot of people. I'm not saying it works that way every time. Your mileage may vary. But then there's also the psychological or the relational component of the healing process, which is going into the session maybe saying, if you're Elon Musk, for example, I need to figure out how to build this Cybertruck and I don't know how to do it. And it's like, okay, that's your intention. And then put on the eye shades and the ear goggles and go inside with the medicine and see what happens. And then there's unlocking that can occur through maybe some of the guidance or questions from the guide. But it's all about being in the intentional setting, right, where that can happen, as opposed to I'm at a concert and I'm a little overstimulated, and maybe I'm a little hot and I'm dehydrated and the music is too loud and I feel something uncomfortable coming up from my unconscious, from the shadowy apartment in myself.
Yes.
But there's nobody here to help me with that. So I better just stuff it down.
Yes.
Right? Very different context.
I have had so many people come to me that have spoken about psychedelics from a bad trip experience, where the version of it, even on a microdose experience, like, oh, this kind of felt like a bad trip. And I will ask them to define what that is. And to me, so many of the times it's just been they're realizing those apartments exist and that they have suppressed them or repressed them, and they've shoved them down there and they've tied them up with a lock and key and a, facial recognition code. And then all of a sudden they're coming back up and they're like, well, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're going about their human experience and these things are wanting to talk to them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to sell beer and porn and Super Bowl than it is this.
Totally.
And this is something that you really, I like to say, you don't proselytize. You find the people who are searching.
Yeah.
When somebody is addressing mental health in these capacities and they're saying, hey, I've tried this supplement and this drug and been prescribed this forever, and I still feel like Eeyore amongst my friends.
Mm-hmm.
When do you say this is a great time to maybe open up and explore?
Well, our book coming out in March is a good resource for that. It's called Psychedelic Therapy. And we'll go through the wide range of variables that are involved in that decision of when to recommend psychedelic therapy. There are some really important factors to think about. One is, for example, what medication is that person on, and do those medications for depression play well with the psychedelic medication? So that's one factor. Another one is, what's your social support network? Do you have anyone in your life who you could come home from a psychedelic therapy session and talk to about your experience and not have them look at you with a big blank look in their face, or much worse, judge you or shame you.
Yeah.
So we don't want to set people up for having a worse time after psychedelic therapy than before. So we have to think about these factors. Those are just two examples. There's so many more.
Great examples.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's that whole ethos on the black sheep of the family.
Yes.
And I started looking at this with psychedelics, and I said, okay, well, let's embody this. And I actually came out with a t-shirt. That's the psychedelic sheep of the family. And that's what I'll get you guys on to the next bit. But that was sort of the embodiment. It's just like, I'm going to own it and embody it. And again, be the change I want to see in the world. And there's people who say like, oh, the way we'll solve all wars is by secretly dosing everybody. And I actually think that wouldn't help at all. I think in general, intention is everything. And all you're going to do is bring out their broken apartments, and now they're going to hate each other even more and hate them. It's like if you hate yourself, and I think this will kind of tie back to relationships. I think a lot of times, we expect certain things out of people, but if people hate themselves, I don't know how we can expect them to like or love you.
Right.
And we deal with this in my own house with my daughter, with bullying and stuff at school. Somebody, my daughter just, we really focus on love yourself unconditionally, love your family, healthy network. And looking at the mental health aspect in relationship and kind of tying this all together, what are your thoughts on that future of healing and its effect on relationship and on effect of like learning that self-love first before you bring it in relationship?
I think it's such a good question. I mean, I think there's some people that say you have to love yourself and accept yourself completely in order to attract the right partner. There's other people who don't say that necessarily. I have a little bit of a middle ground around that. I don't totally love and accept myself completely. I feel like I'm going to be working on that for the rest of my life. I mean, I do love myself and accept myself, but like completely, And I think that really, I mean, for me, coming into relationship with you and having, again, circling back to like part of what we're up to is not just being like, Will, you have these hard shadows and moldy apartments in your building, and I'm here, to be your teammate, but that's for you to deal with.
Right.
And for me to be like, okay, I need to work on my shit. And we're really about the interdependency, where it's not just you deal with your stuff, I'll deal with my stuff, and we can be teammates.
Right.
But it's I'm standing for all the young, moldy parts of you that still need healing as much as you're standing for them.
Exactly.
And vice versa. I'm standing for mine and you're standing for them as well. And so, I mean, honestly, I really don't see how we can have a shift in culture around healing, whether there's psychedelic therapy, mental health, whatever it is, without that level of connection. I think it can only go so far, in my opinion. But when we can find people, whether it's a primary partner or people in our lives who can actually connect and attune with each other and show up for each other, I think there's so much more that's possible when we have that. So
100% agree. We live in a culture that's about this sort of rugged individuality kind of ideal, the tough guy, and who doesn't need much. And it's such a huge handicap because, our view is that having a secure home base gives us the power to go out and do great stuff in the world. And I think it's just much harder to go do that if you don't have that at home. And whether home is just like in our case, my daughter's grown up and left the house and it's just the fur babies. But when you have a family with children and you're teaching them that way, or maybe you have like an extended family and there's more of a culture of sharing. And if any member of that community is hurting or falling behind in their life, like you're there for them. Wow. I mean, I think that's hardwired into the human apparatus, but we're denying that with the technological advancements that we make and the isolation that we suffer as a result of that. So we're kind of swimming upstream, I think, in some ways to remind ourselves that this level of collaboration or interdependency is real and it's actually available. We just have to learn how to do it.
One thing that it seems like both of you are getting at in a really beautiful way is as we're looking at the future of healing and medicine, so many people are approaching this left brain tech approach,
right?
Especially with mental health. Oh, we're just going to have another GLP for happiness.
Totally.
Shoot that thing in your brain, you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
And we see those are roller coasters that bring you up that also bring you down, similar. So I think so much of it's coming back to ancient wisdom around culture, around community, around connection. So not just in partnership, but also in chosen family.
Yes. Agreed.
And the book I wrote, 14 years ago, the first book I wrote was called How Much Does a Zebra Weigh? And it was around fitness, nutrition, all these things for teens, especially try to get to them before society has. And the answer to how much does a zebra weigh, I'm kind of ruining my book here, is who gives a crap? Like if a zebra saw a scale in nature, it would sniff it. It would find it completely useless, maybe defecate on it. But
exactly.
we're judging our whole life and happiness on it.
Yeah.
Right.
But the relevant part here is I think there's been such a hubris issue that people in the mental health journey, they're looking through things so isolated that they don't realize, first off, that we're part of the animal kingdom. And second, that we are a communal animal.
Right.
Yeah. We, similar to a wolf pack, we are meant to be in community, in connection, and not isolated. Yeah. And I feel like both in relationship, in personal development, and in the psychedelic experience, like the highest levels of awareness in all three is interconnectedness.
Yeah, exactly.
Has that been your experience as well?
100%. What would you say?
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the privileges of getting to encounter indigenous culture and indigenous healing in the jungle and the experiences I've had is that there's a different, what I took away was a different definition of what illness is and what health is. And illness being defined as broken relationships. Things that belong in relationship are not connected. And so then the healing becomes restoring connection, restoring relationships, interdependency on every level, right? Top to bottom, sky to the soil, and so everywhere. So that framework or that metaphor for understanding illness makes a lot of sense to me, just experientially. And like you said, I mean, when you have a psychedelic experience, you start, one of the first things people typically will say when they open their mouths is, oh my gosh, everything's connected. Or I didn't see that was connected. And it is, you know? And the joy and the relaxation of discovery that the perception of disconnection was just a perception. It's like, oh, thank God. I thought it was disconnected, but it's actually not disconnected. It's pretty cool.
Force is real.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Two more I want to dive into. One is, what question do you think that every patient or client should be asking their therapist?
Great question.
What would you say on that?
I mean, personally, I would ask them how good their relationship is at home.
Nice.
Like, how much of a we do they feel like they're actually in at home? That's what I would ask.
That's a good question.
Oh, I love that. Should have done that to my first marriage therapist.
Yeah.
God, if I would have spun that would have been worth the $4.25 an hour.
Yeah.
And it would have been the last hour I would have spent there, I'm
Totally.
sure.
Wow. Yeah.
We've been watching this Apple TV show called Shrinking that has Harrison Ford in it. And the main character is the therapist who is just absolutely a nightmare in his personal life. And he's trying to show up.
He's figuring it out.
He's figuring it out.
I love that.
But it's, it's a great question.
What would you ask?
What would I ask? Oh my gosh. What are their mental health practices in their own life is what I would say. How do they how do they define their own mental health, and what are they doing about it?
Ooh, that's good.
I love that. And that really pertains a lot to the work I do, where I like to distinguish for people the difference between being a historian or an archaeologist and an architect. And I think you need both parts. But I feel like often people just go in and they focus all their attention on being a historian or being, an archaeologist of the past.
Totally.
Of which all fingers point to who? Mom and dad. Hey! I'm like, I think I'm pretty good, mom and dad. And, but they're still going to point them to us versus the archaeology of who can you be.
Right. Yeah.
And with that, I think a lot of people really don't see, hey, I am actually improving and healing. Like, well, that didn't feel good. So I'm curious. The last question I had is, what's one sign someone is healing faster than they think?
What would you say to that?
Well, we often see members of someone's community or their family reporting that they're doing better before the individual acknowledges that they're doing better.
Yeah.
And so this brings up a really interesting relational reality that part of how we know who we are is through the reflection of our community. And again, I think it's a fallacy of our culture that we are the self-made. Right?
Yes.
We're made by what people reflect back to us. And it kind of goes to this question of, do you need to completely love yourself before you can love another person fully? And I don't think infants know how to do that.
Right.
But they learn how to do it by having reflections given to them, for better, for worse, right? Some more clouded than others. But so I think it's interesting that sometimes people are healing and their community knows that they're healing before they do.
Right. Yeah, I would say something similar. I think that when I am with friends or clients or in our partnership of being like, hey, I'm still feeling stuck and I don't understand why, but I can look and I can see, well, you did this very differently. You did this very differently. I think it is reflection. I would probably answer the same way, is really getting reflection, because I don't think we can see what we have actually accomplished when we're still stuck in some level of feeling stuck.
Yeah.
And
I think it goes to that negativity bias that's in that default mode, is like we don't see the full picture. And it's so critical to have that. The challenges to our worldview every day, ideally, from people who care about us. Yeah.
I love that. I have my clients call their amygdala Amy in general. Name it so you can separate. It's like Amy the amygdala. They're like, that's great. Thanks for keeping me from walking in front of a car while I'm looking at my cell phone.
Totally.
You did your job, but you're also, you're more the water boy than you are the quarterback.
Right.
So thank you for being the water boy. So I didn't get to hydrate and give me my electrolytes, but you should be running the show.
Totally.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I actually have one more for you both. This one's very harmonious for both of you. It's this. See, that's called adaptation, right? Adapt and overcome.
Right.
That's the flow of life. So curious what harmony means to you now after you've dedicated your lives to trauma healing and stepping into this. What does harmony mean to you?
Go ahead.
So I'm going to use a story to answer your question. We went through a period early on in our marriage, right after we got married, where we were just like in a startup, which was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously we bought a house. And after we took the keys from the past owner, we realized it was full of mold. The whole thing was basically full of mold. So we had to I'm sensitive to mold, but we wouldn't want to live in this house anyways. We had to take the whole house down. And usually when you buy a house, it's a little bit of a stretch financially. So we had to take the whole house down and rebuild it so that it wasn't moldy. But then after all that, we decided the next year, we're like, okay, we're going to prioritize regulation. And what that meant to us is like really stand for what's going to be the regulating answer to us now. Like, what do we need to regulate our nervous system? What do we need to feel regulated here? And by doing that, like that was our year intention.
Yeah.
It really shifted our capacity in terms of feeling relaxed and harmonious. Yeah. So that would be my answer, is prioritizing regulation, whatever that means to anybody. Yeah. Be my answer.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I was going to use the word resilience. In other words, when we're talking about our practice of lying on top of each other on the couch, there's a phenomenon that we know happens in resilience training, where the magnetic field of one person's heart, when they're in coherence, when they're in harmony inside of their heart because they're relaxed, can entrain someone's heart into regulation from dysregulation. So it's sort of like when you go into a barn and there's a huge horse there that's got a big heart and a big magnetic field coming off of that heart, who's regulated, you entrain into that, you relax. So for me, harmony is like having enough resilience in the system that the dysregulation that's a part of everyday life gets absorbed into that resilient field. So I like that model because it affords the fact of life, which is that every day is going to bring a huge challenge to our regulation.
Especially entrepreneurs, especially your audience.
Especially entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I really think, most people, they need to start by realizing they're not broken and that they're just burdened.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
And that healing begins when we feel safe enough to really come home to ourselves. And that's that alignment, brain, body, soul. And all of these are amazing tools, techniques, regardless of if they're easy or not, they're effective. So thank you both for being here today. This was extremely powerful. And what are the best ways to follow your journeys as well as read the new forthcoming book?
That's great.
Go ahead.
Well, our podcast, which is about relationships and relationship agreements, is called The Art of We, and that can be found Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where you would listen. So that would be my plug.
Yeah.
What would
Love
you
it.
say?
You can also find us at our institute, which is just psychiatryinstitute.com. And you can subscribe to our newsletter there. We'll have our book page up on there. Eventually it comes out in March. So in the meantime, that's a good place to find us.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you both. This
Thank
was
you.
so much fun.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks,
us,
Kyle. Great
Yeah.
to be here.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, if this episode sparked something in you, don't just wander off into the abyss of the internet. Hit subscribe so you can actually get the good stuff when it drops. And if you're feeling generous or mildly enlightened, leave some love in a review. It takes just 30 seconds, and somehow it feeds the algorithm gods so they know to send more people who really need it. Now, if you want to step deeper into my world, rapidharmony.com is where the real magic lives. Coaching, community, rituals, and a few surprises that are way better than just scrolling around another motivational reel and not doing anything about it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being you. And remember, your inner harmony isn't hiding. It's just waiting for you to pay attention. I'll see you on the next episode. Now go subscribe before you forget.